Thank you for joining us for this introduction to INTCAS's independent services. I am Cheryl Darrett-Boychuk, U.S. Director of Institutional Relations at INTCAS, which stands for Intelligent Communities Around Students. I've been in the field of international education for more than 20 years, having spent a lot of time researching return on investment metrics. In my current professional volunteer capacity, I serve on the editorial board of NAFSA's award-winning magazine, International Educator. Just to frame my perspective from both a professional and personal lens, my eldest son, William, is a junior in high school, so we're deep into his college exploration. Not surprisingly, he's taken an interest in affirmative action. I find myself encouraging him to balance his energies between short-term and long-term priorities. Acknowledge the challenge right in front of you right now by working harder and smarter on what you can control in the immediate term, but also devote some time to crusading for justice, however you personally define that. Advocate for what you think is right over the long haul. I think that mindset applies to the realities within today's international education industry in the United States. You may have seen this article earlier this month quoting Kevin Kinzer, head of the Education Policy Studies Department at Penn State University. It was during an event called Global Higher Ed in Changing Times. Kinzer said, "We used to talk very clearly about this internationalization imperative as if global involvement was an irresistible force. There are a lot of people who disagree with that. I'm an optimist going through a very pessimistic phase right now," Kinzer continued. "I'm not sure the idea of internationalization resonates with as broad a population as I thought." So what are we going to do about it? Well, as true international educators, we might consider treating the current political climate as if it were a study abroad experience. Political pendulum swings can be painful but powerful pushes to new perspectives. If we dig deep enough with a strong dose of humility, we can find ways to improve international admissions. And as we all know, it's entirely possible and even healthy to step out of our comfort zones while staying true to ourselves. Fortunately, the industry is served by a robust and competent army that is crusading for justice to advance global student mobility. NAFSA is leading that advocacy charge, and they've made it easy for members to get involved. For example, they recently launched a Welcome to Succeed campaign. They've developed several gorgeous visual components. My personal favorite is what it takes to pass the hardest entrance exam in the world. It beautifully illustrates the admittedly challenging journey of a non-U.S. student wishing to study in the USA. Two of those obstacles directly relate to what we'll be discussing today: due diligence and funds verification. So the question is, what can be done with proven and appropriate technology to maintain compliance with whatever directives the executive branch imposes on our industry, and facilitate that process as much as we can for those qualified international applicants we serve every day? Which brings us to the reason INTCAS exists. The company originally began in London about 7 years ago, partly in response to the United Kingdom's decision to tighten their immigration policy. The team recognized gross inefficiencies in a very fragmented market. There are lots of different stakeholders, all ultimately trying to serve the international student. So INTCAS carefully constructed intelligent digital communities around those students to improve efficiency and integrity throughout the process. As you can see at INTCAS.com, we feature a comprehensive infrastructure built to connect students and institutions while acknowledging and actually embedding many other components along that student's journey. INTCAS helps all kinds of education institutions attract, recruit, and manage international students in a safe, compliant, and cost-effective way. Our mission is to help students throughout their academic and career paths. Here's a linear representation of that journey. INTCAS offers a sophisticated platform where various stakeholders enter the path at different times and places. To simplify that path with an example, about 2 years ago, INTCAS partnered with Study USA. As you probably know, the Seattle-based company has been recruiting international students to the States for more than 40 years. So INTCAS powers the technology behind the Study USA Plus platform, where qualified students are able to do more than simply express their interest in one of Study USA's advertisers. They're actually able to submit applications to those specific institutions. So in this case, INTCAS integrates with the Study USA platform at the application stage. We have a number of other partners around the world, throughout Europe, Asia, and the Middle East, where we provide the technology behind that student journey. Check out intcas.com/about us for details. We found that some institutions don't necessarily need an entirely new platform, but they can certainly use specific pieces to solve their most pressing problems. INTCAS provides that solution through our independent services, namely funds verification, due diligence, and immigration support. So let's move into the actual process. How is this going to work exactly for U.S. institutions? We'll first take you through our registration and onboarding process, and ultimately present you with your own dashboard within INTCAS. This demo dashboard is for our fictitious counselor at Yellowstone College. The interface is very intuitive. To initiate a new request, just hover over the New button. In this case, we chose Funds Verification. For any of our independent services, you'll need to provide a reason for the request, along with a few student details. You'll also notice that the pricing information is readily transparent. As we'll see on the pricing chart, the cost of some services may be absorbed by either the institution or the student. In the case of funds verification, for example, the cost is typically borne by the student. When you submit the request, the student receives an email message inviting him or her to create an INTCAS account. We authenticate that e-address with a verification code. The student clicks through to our login page with those data fields pre-populated. Of course, the student is able to customize his profile accordingly. So let's work our way through a few of the services INTCAS provides, starting with funds verification. Within the student's profile, William, in this case, is able to manage his requests from the Yellowstone College counselor. When he clicks on his request link for funds verification, and before he pays for it, he needs to ensure that his bank or his sponsor's bank is one of the 4,500 different financial institutions with whom we're affiliated. For example, we have very strong representation in India, with formal links to about 40 different banks in that country alone. Some of the most popular banks in the world participate in our network, so the funds verification is very appropriate for applicants from relatively low-risk jurisdictions, for those students who just need to satisfy the requirement quickly and easily. If their bank is not part of the network, then the process reverts back to the institution's traditional methods for verifying financial capacity. Assuming those source banks lie within our network, the student can confirm the purchase of the full verification report, which is about $30 for as many banks as he'd like to link to his profile. From the student dashboard, William selects Add New Account and chooses a bank from the list. If he chooses HSBC, for example, the account holder will be asked to link that bank to the student's profile. Now, we chose this interface in part to facilitate the fight against fraud. This approach serves to authenticate the user's identity. INTCAS employs the most robust security and privacy methods used by the world's leading banks, informed by Know Your Customer and anti-money laundering guidelines, and the user is always in charge of restricting access to their data at any time. So in William's example, I am his financial sponsor. I used Vanguard Investments, PayPal, and Bank of America. Click on any of the accounts for more details, including the past 90 days of transactions. So the process parallels current practice of requesting the past 3 months' worth of bank statements. And as you know, regulations require documentary evidence of financial support, but not originals. Typically, admissions counselors expect the student to take the actual paper originals to the consulate, who then vets the document for authenticity. Now, please note that these balances on the INTCAS platform do not automatically refresh. If the host institution would like a more recent update, the counselor will need to make that additional request through the platform. The account holder will need to grant permission again to ping their account, as we do not save any of the students' or sponsors' banking credentials within our platform. That approach may add another 30 seconds of inconvenience to the student or sponsor, but it minimizes the risk if those details are not saved within our system in the first place. The total balance of all accounts is shown in the currency of the host country, obviously in this case, US dollars. Of course, when he's ready, the student can submit the verification profile to the institution that requested it, in this case, Yellowstone College. The institution is alerted that the profile has been submitted. As always, the counselor may manage those requests from her INTCAS dashboard. The counselor may view exactly what the student sent and proceed accordingly based on those financial credentials. Again, it's a very intuitive, user-friendly interface. Now, let's review due diligence. The institution may return to its dashboard and request any of our other services using a similar process. You'll have an opportunity to select the individuals for whom you wish to request due diligence based on your own knowledge of people affiliated with that particular application. In this case, we've chosen to run a report only on William's financial sponsor, which happens to be me. As you would expect, the due diligence request requires a few more data fields, such as date of birth, nationality, and address of the person in question. Here's a partial screenshot of the due diligence report. We're looking forward to guiding the conversation about reasonable due diligence on student visa applications. INTCAS's proprietary algorithms parallel best practices from the global financial services sector and check over 9 billion records from around the world. For the vast majority, these cases will result in a green light, which you can see in the upper left corner. That means the application can proceed without issue. However, there might be situations when the results warrant some caution, and those will be flagged with yellow or red indications depending on the severity of the results. In all cases, the final decision of admitting the student or not will lie with the institutions. The bottom line, INTCAS warns of potentially negative applications which could damage the reputation of the education institution. So we can move on to our immigration support services, namely the mock visa interview. To initiate a new request, just hover over the New button and select Mock Visa Interview. There's no need to go into too much detail here as it's pretty self-explanatory. At the institution's request, we can coordinate a one-to-one meeting between the student applicant and a member of our immigration support team. The interaction is conducted via live video within the INTCAS platform. The immigration specialist asks a series of questions typically used by host government officials during actual visa interviews, providing the student with feedback and an opportunity to prepare and practice in advance of their official appointment. Institutions may also choose to take advantage of our visa application support. Again, accessible from the institution's dashboard within INTCAS. Support involves our specialists reviewing the application and mentoring students to complete and submit a defect-free visa application form. Similar assessments are also available for dependents of the applicant. Now, you're probably wondering, how much is this going to cost? Here's a chart outlining the different fees. The minimum cost to get started is $2,500, which includes the contract setup and license fee, then $1,500 worth of credits. Not surprisingly, the more an institution spends up front, the lower the effective credit cost, dropping from $12.50 per credit to $7.65 per credit if you were to proceed with our largest package. You're welcome to start off with our tester just to become familiar with our capabilities. Then, of course, when the balance gets low, we'll alert you about renewing and eliminate the setup fee moving forward. Funds verification and due diligence are very reasonably priced at 2 credits each, and the institution can decide whether or not to absorb that cost or volley it over to the student. At 2 credits, the cost ranges from $15 to $30, again depending on the volume of credits you purchase in advance. So with the tester package, you'll get 60 actual checks to choose between funds verification or due diligence if you choose to absorb those costs. Typically, the student absorbs the cost of funds verification because it's a more convenient process for them and for their sponsors. The institution normally assumes the cost of due diligence, but ultimately the decision lies with the institution. As you would expect, our immigration services have higher fees due to the personal interactions of those services. So 55 credits equates to a range of $420 to $690. 100 credits ranges between $765 to $1,200. Of course, let us know if you have any questions about that. I'd be happy to send you a proposal that outlines all those details. Now, I'd like to address a few trends in light of INTCAS's strategic plan moving forward. One of the beauties of the British perspective is that they seem at least a few months ahead of the US when it comes to anticipating what's next in the international education industry. So we can look toward Europe today to cautiously and broadly plan for what might happen in the US over the next few months. In Germany, we've seen that authorities want more financial proof than a bank statement from international student applicants. And those students are looking for services that make visa applications easier. So unless students have a scholarship, they usually prove that they have sufficient funds for the duration of their studies via a blocked account at a German bank in Germany. A blocked account is similar to an escrow account, where students deposit funds when applying for a visa. 8,640 euros is deposited in usual cases, and over the year of study, the account pays out a monthly allowance of 720 euros. So the parents also appreciate that approach as a means to encourage their sons and daughters to budget accordingly. Interestingly, we've seen a similar trend north of our border. Immigration, Refugee, and Citizenship Canada has launched a student direct stream to expedite applications from China, India, Vietnam, and the Philippines. Students from those countries who can satisfy a series of criteria, such as stricter language requirements and financial capacity, will benefit from faster processing times. Students must submit proof of tuition payment for the first year of study in a designated learning institution in Canada, and purchase a guaranteed investment certificate, a deposit in a bank account in Canada which guarantees a rate of return over a fixed period of time. The program is under review, and authorities may expand it to a few countries in Africa this year. Speaking of African countries, we often receive requests for funds verification for countries like Kenya, Ghana, and Nigeria. Our network is expanding. For example, we recently added Barclays in Kenya and Stanbic IBTC in Nigeria, which is a member of Standard Bank Group. In South Africa, we have Nedbank and African Bank. But our affiliations are not terribly comprehensive in Africa. So INTCAS has come up with a few different alternatives. One is to encourage students to deposit funds into a bank that is within our network. Another option relates to our escrow services, which are currently under development in line with our World Scholarship Program. We're super excited to coordinate this substantial scholarship program, which involves both government entities as well as individual investors. We're working with wealth managers around the world to provide their high net worth clients with options to help fund the program while taking advantage of their home country's incentives for charitable contributions. Those funds will be held in escrow and available exclusively for students applying to institutions within the INTCAS platform. We're planning several events around the world this year where we'll invite institutions, donors, and other stakeholders to meet and greet, so stay tuned for that. I also wanted to reinforce that INTCAS is serious about GDPR, that's the General Data Protection Regulation out of Europe, anti-money laundering guidelines, and Know Your Customer guidelines, as well as other compliance measures that are accepted by the global financial services industry. INTCAS's infrastructure is ISO 27001 compliant, which means we abide by global standards to keep information assets secure. INTCAS is a regulated entity as an appointed representative of Bryce Amory Capital. That's regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority in the United Kingdom. That's the government institution which oversees all affairs across the financial services sector. Of course, let us know if you need more information about that. Do let me know if you have any questions about funds verification, due diligence, and immigration support. I can also dive into deeper detail about our upcoming initiatives. Just email cdarrettboychuk@incas.com. We very much look forward to working with you to advance global mobility of qualified students around the world. Thank you for joining us.